Now, back to Gary Rivers on WHBC.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for hour number 2. This one should be really interesting. The Canton Symphony Orchestra, always doing something, and Dan Cavalancia joins us this morning. Brought in Heather Phillips, who's a Hoover grad, but we haven't seen you for some time, Heather. Where have
Grew
you?
up in North Canton, Ohio, musically trained with the Canton Symphony Orchestra.
Woohoo.
Dan and I were both instrumentalists. I was a flautist, and he was a clarinetist.
All right, well, let's talk about your life, Heather, because you left here and you went to Cincinnati, apparently.
Yes, in 2002, I graduated from Hoover High School, and then in 2008, I finished my master's degree from the Cincinnati Conservatory. So I did both my degrees there, and then went on to apprentice around the country, and in the last 5 years, I've been freelancing as a professional opera singer.
So it's an interesting lifestyle because you live in Pennsylvania. That's where your home base is now,
Yes.
but you travel everywhere.
Yes, absolutely.
And why is that? Is that there's always openings or events coming up and people are looking for sopranos?
It is a little bit tricky because your employer is always changing every 2 months or so.
Wow.
So I have a manager that's based in New York City, and that's kind of his job, to put all those pieces of the puzzle together. But we work as a team, and but I love to travel. So for me, I love visiting new cities and meeting new people, and it's really a thrill.
So everyone else who's just listening, what are they going to be hearing and seeing this weekend?
Symphony Chorus takes the stage with Heather and friends, and the chorus conductor Britt Cooper is conducting Haydn's Mass in the Time of War.
And then we have it a full evening. Well, Heather, let's at least give folks a chance to find out a little bit more about you as well.
Sure.
Where can they find you? I found you through Facebook rather quickly as well, and you put up a few of your performances through there.
Yeah, I have a Facebook page under my full name, Heather Phillips. My website is heatherphillipssoprano.com, and I do make an effort to get as many performances as I can online because a lot of people that I meet around the country can't always be in the city that I'm performing.
Right.
So I really think social media is a great vehicle to be able to share classical music with audiences all over the world. So I try and take advantage of that as much as I can.
Both of you decide really to get into classical music and stay there because you really are showcasing what classical music is and keeping it alive and thriving.
I had a really strong reaction to classical music as a kid. The first performance I went to was with the Cleveland Opera, Cleveland Symphony, Madame Butterfly. And I was like 12, 13 years old, and it was actually part of the Canton Symphony's program to.
I went to that. Yeah, I remember that.
We went to the opera, and our seats were like in the peanut gallery.
Oh yeah,
we
were. Yeah, we
couldn't
were way
see
back.
much, but it was just the power of the orchestra and the voices. Right. I mean, I just fell in love with it, and so I was already singing in church choir, and I started taking voice lessons. And my voice teacher at the time said, "What are you going to go to school for?" She's like, "You've got some pretty good chops that you might be able to make a living out of this." And I was in the youth symphony as a flautist, and I played piano, so it just.
So you had all the musical background.
I really did.
Do you still perform with the flute, or
just in my living room at home?
Oh, okay.
I do still enjoy being an instrumentalist. I play piano more often. I've been a voice teacher throughout my performing career.
And that probably helps you too in practice. You can probably play along, huh?
It's very necessary, yeah, to be able to play the harmonic structures of what music you're working on, so I don't have to pay a pianist most of the time. I do work with vocal coaches that are a lot more expert on the piano and the operatic repertoire than I am, but it is a very helpful skill.
All right, can you guys stick around for a little bit? We're going to talk a little bit more about how you get to where you are and how folks may be listening. They might have a daughter or a son who is that, and we'll get a little bit more of an in-depth, if you will, on the background of this as a career. It's 16 minutes after 11 o'clock. Back in just a few moments with Dan Cavalancia and Heather Phillips.
Now back to Gary Rivers on WHBC.
All right, it's 11:20 on News Talk 1480 WHBC. Back to our conversation with Dan and Heather with the Canton Symphony Orchestra performance coming up this weekend. And Heather Phillips, a Hoover grad, went on to UC down in Cincinnati, and now traveling the world. What's the most exotic locale you've performed in?
Well, probably my most favorite would be Lucca, Italy. I was there actually as an apprentice, and I sang an opera there in the summertime and studied the Italian language. And it's a city where Giacomo Puccini was born, who's a famous opera composer. So to experience all that history was really, really exciting.
Wow.
Yeah,
Do you get to do any traveling around that, or do you pretty much stay because you're apprenticing? Huh?
I was there mostly just in Lucca, but I did get a chance. It was close to Pisa, so I saw the Leaning Tower, and and did make it down to Rome as well. Yeah.
And so here you are now. Your career. How long have you been professionally singing?
I've been apprenticing for about 8 to 9 years, and officially a freelance professional singer for the last 4.5 years.
Enjoying it tremendously, I can tell.
Yeah, I really love it, and music brings a lot of meaning to my life, so that's the most important thing.
So, as we were talking prior to, I was telling you about a young lady that I'd heard singing that had, just to me, an astounding voice. And that brought to mind, you were that person a few years ago as well, and you said you saw your first performance in Cleveland,
Yes.
and that's what got you on. But how do you encourage, or what do you say to someone or a family member who's listening and they think their child may have something there?
Yeah.
Well, what do they do? How do they get started?
Well, private voice lessons is really the first step to work with somebody who has the credentials to really be able to assess the voice and also just perform and try and join as many musical organizations within your community. Like, as I was saying earlier, I was a member of the Youth Symphony. I also sang in the chorus of the Canton Symphony Orchestra as a high school student. I was on stage a lot in high school. So experience. Yeah, as well as good training. And then when you're looking into universities, when I was young, I contacted all the voice teachers at the places that I applied to an audition to take a voice lesson before I auditioned, because the voice teacher is really the most important thing when you're studying at the college and post-college level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Dan?
Well, I was just going to say, if you want to go the route into music and go into college, you definitely go visit the professors, because they're literally your parent for 4 years.
Absolutely.
And if you don't like them from day one, yeah, it's the most miserable 4 years of your life.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
Well, yeah, and they're literally steering you, and they're your vehicle, if you will, to furthering your career.
Absolutely. And I'm also a bit of a pragmatist. I also tell all young kids I work with, have a plan B, because it's a very difficult career to make it in professionally. You have to be very persistent, and you have to work really hard, practice, and then practice some more.
Right.
But I worked all kinds of side jobs before I came full-time professional.
Really? You made burgers at McDonald's?
I
Come
worked
on.
at Jimmy John's
Really?
my freshman year of college. I made sandwiches. I've walked dogs. I cleaned houses. I mean, you name it. I didn't want to go far into debt, knowing I was going to graduate as a professional musician.
Right.
So I worked my tail off.
Now, was Plan B also maybe piano or one of the instruments as well?
Absolutely. An instrumental background for a singer is primary. So if you can get a tutor or something before you go into those institutions, that's also great.
Well, then let's segue into the Canton Symphony, because this seems to be a really good grounds, if you will, to kind of get folks perhaps moving forward.
what's the number? We have like 30 musicians in the Cleveland Orchestra that came from us.
Wow.
There's a whole bunch that have gone off to Texas, Rochester Philharmonic, everything like that. So, we might be little Canton, Ohio, but it's full of world-class musicians or people who are on their way to be.
And then you come in and Heather. All right. Well, and on that note, let's talk about again, the performance is this Saturday night, right?
Yes.
So that looks pretty good. And what's next for you, Heather? I hate to see that you're going to leave one performance only.
I know. I'm here for a week and then I'm off. The next performances I have are in the opera Carmen. I sing the role of Michaela. I've done that role a lot, and that's going to be in Naples, Florida. And then I'll have a Brahms Requiem in Portland, Oregon. And next season, I'll be making my professional European debut as well. I can't say where yet because the company hasn't announced their season yet, but
I'm pretty excited about that.
Very excited. It's a really big opportunity for me.
Well, good luck to you. And
Thank you.
So much for coming in and sharing. Dan, thanks for bringing Heather with us this morning.
Thanks
it's really
for fitting us in.
Real pleasure. My dad always had 1480 WHBC on in the morning when I went to school, so it's cool to be here.
Well, hopefully he's listening to this. We stream so he can pick it up in North Carolina. Oh, but he's here now, though, right?
Yeah, I'm sure he's listening. Hi, Dad.
All right. Thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Drills it high on the right, feeds it Andre Wesson, head of the key, lobs at the basket. Young who dunks it.